There comes a moment in life when you realize something unsettling. You are not losing arguments because you are wrong. You are losing them because you are arguing with someone who cannot think. You explain calmly. You present evidence. You lower your tone. You try logic, and yet the conversation goes nowhere. The louder they become, the more confident they appear. The calmer you remain, the more they accuse you of arrogance. And slowly, you feel your energy draining. Arthur Schopenhauer understood this long before modern psychology did. He observed something most people are too emotional to admit. You cannot reason someone out of a position they did not reason themselves into. And the more intelligent you are, the more this reality will disturb you. Because intelligence seeks clarity, but foolishness seeks victory. The fool does not argue to discover truth. He argues to protect his ego, and that is why he appears fearless. Not because he is strong, but because he does not see the complexity you see. The intelligent mind doubts itself. The foolish mind never does. So what do? Do you fight harder? Do you sharpen your arguments? Do you humiliate them with superior logic? Schopenhauer's answer is brutal. You disengage, not because you cannot win, but because some battles degrade the mind that participates in them. Tonight, we are not discussing insults. We are not mocking anyone. We are examining something colder. How an intelligent person protects their peace in a world ruled by impulse. How to deal with fools without becoming one. Because the highest form of power is not dominance. It is selective silence. And once you understand this, you will stop explaining yourself to people who never intended to understand you. Before we continue, if you value clarity over chaos, subscribe, not for noise, for depth. And if you've ever felt drained after arguing with someone who refuses to think, comment, not worth my energy. Now let's begin. Foolishness, in Schopenhauer's philosophy, is not a lack of education. It is not a measure of social status. It is not even a question of IQ. It is something far more dangerous. It is the inability to think beyond impulse. The fool is governed by immediate emotion, shallow perception, and rigid certainty. He does not examine his own thoughts because he does not suspect they could be flawed. And that is where the true danger begins. An intelligent person experiences doubt. Doubt is uncomfortable. It forces reflection. It introduces hesitation. But doubt is also refinement. It is the mind checking itself. The fool, however, moves without hesitation. His confidence comes from simplicity. He sees the world in straight lines, right or wrong, us or them, victory or defeat. Complexity irritates him because complexity demands patience, and patience requires discipline. Schopenhauer observed that most people are driven not by reason, but by what he called the will. This will is blind striving. It pushes individuals to defend themselves, to assert dominance, to protect their pride. When a fool argues, he is not seeking truth. He is defending his identity. That is why facts rarely matter in such conversations. You are not debating ideas. You are confronting someone's fragile sense of self. The intelligent person assumes others are operating with similar depth. This is the first mistake. Intelligence projects itself outward. You assume your opponent values evidence. You assume they care about coherence. You assume they are capable of self-correction. But foolishness does not function that way. It resists correction because correction feels like humiliation. And humiliation is intolerable to an ego built on shallow certainty. There is another element. Fools are often louder, not because they possess stronger arguments, but because volume substitutes for substance. Certainty substitutes for understanding. Repetition substitutes for reasoning. The intelligent mind, recognizing nuance, speaks carefully. The foolish mind, recognizing only threat, speaks forcefully. To an audience that cannot distinguish between confidence and correctness, the fool may even appear victorious. This is where many intelligent people become frustrated. They believe truth should win automatically. They believe rational structure should overpower emotional noise. But social reality does not always reward truth. It rewards performance. And fools perform without restraint because they lack awareness of their own limitations. Schopenhauer warned against attempting to educate those who are not ready to learn. Instruction requires humility from the listener. Without humility, knowledge feels like attack. So when you offer correction, the fool hears insult. When you offer evidence, he hears challenge. When you offer logic, he hears threat. And threat activates aggression. Consider how often arguments escalate, not because of content, but because of pride. Pride is the fortress of foolishness. It refuses surrender even when defeat is obvious. The intelligent person may concede a minor point to maintain harmony. The fool interprets concession as weakness. He does not understand strategic retreat. He understands only dominance. This is why arguing with fools often feels exhausting. You are playing chess. They are flipping the board. You are building structure. They are reacting to emotion. You are weighing possibilities. They are clinging to certainty. The mismatch is not intellectual alone. It is structural. Two different operating systems attempting communication. The deeper tragedy is that foolishness often masks itself as courage. The fool speaks boldly. He interrupts confidently. He dismisses complexity without hesitation. To the untrained eye, this resembles strength. But true strength is measured by restraint. True intelligence is revealed by the capacity to withhold reaction. Schopenhauer believed solitude was a sanctuary for the thinking mind. Not because society is worthless, but because constant exposure to shallow thought corrodes clarity. When you surround yourself with noise, you begin to normalize it. You begin to defend yourself unnecessarily. You begin to waste energy on conversations that produce no growth. Understanding foolishness changes your strategy. Instead of attempting to dominate, you begin to observe. Instead of reacting, you analyze. Instead of escalating, you detach. The fool seeks engagement because engagement validates him. Attention fuels him. Resistance excites him. Silence unsettles him. And this is the first quiet lesson. You do not defeat foolishness by overpowering it. You outgrow it. When you recognize that some minds cannot meet you at your level of reasoning, you stop dragging yourself downward in an attempt to be understood. You preserve your language. You preserve your calm. You preserve your time. The intelligent person's greatest weapon is not sharper argument. It is selective participation. Because the moment you realize someone is committed not to truth, but to ego, you understand something liberating. You are no longer obligated to continue. And that is where power begins. If foolishness is driven by impulse, then argument becomes its arena. And this is where the intelligent person makes a costly mistake. You believe engagement will produce clarity. You assume that if you present your reasoning carefully enough, slowly enough, respectfully enough, the other person will eventually see what you see. But Schopenhauer would warn you, the very structure of this assumption is flawed. You are imagining a shared objective. You are seeking truth. The fool is seeking validation. This mismatch creates friction. Not the productive friction of debate, but the corrosive friction of misaligned intent. When two intelligent individuals disagree, they explore. They refine each other's thinking. They sharpen understanding through contrast. But when intelligence meets stubborn foolishness, something else happens. The discussion becomes circular. Points repeat. Emotions intensify. Voices rise. Nothing evolves. The intelligent mind is wired for coherence. It wants resolution. It wants ideas to connect logically. When conversation refuses to progress, the mind experiences strain. It keeps searching for a breakthrough that never arrives. This is exhausting because you are applying higher cognitive effort to a lower cognitive exchange. You are investing depth into a space that cannot hold it. Schopenhauer understood that human beings are not primarily rational creatures. We are creatures of will. That means we cling to beliefs not because they are correct, but because they feel protective. The fool does not defend his position because he has verified it. He defends it because abandoning it would injure his pride. And pride, especially in the insecure, is fiercely guarded. Notice how often foolish arguments escalate when cornered. When presented with clear evidence, the fool rarely pauses to reconsider. Instead, he shifts tactics. He changes the subject. He attacks your tone. He questions your character. He exaggerates minor inconsistencies. This is not strategy born of intelligence. It is defense born of fear. But if you continue to engage, you are pulled into the same emotional current. Arguing drains the intelligent person because intelligence values structure. When structure collapses into chaos, the mind must work harder to maintain order. You begin clarifying what was already clear. You begin defending positions that never required defense. You begin explaining definitions of simple words. The conversation regresses to basics. And regression is frustrating for a mind accustomed to nuance. There is another layer. Intelligent individuals often carry a quiet desire to be understood, not admired, not worshipped, understood. So when someone refuses to comprehend a carefully articulated point, it feels like rejection. It feels like dismissal. And this subtle emotional sting tempts you to try harder. You speak longer. You elaborate more. You attempt different angles. You lower your tone to sound calmer. You increase your intensity to sound firmer. But none of it changes the core problem. The fool is not confused. He is resistant. And resistance is not solved by repetition. Schopenhauer would argue that excessive engagement with fools is a form of self-inflicted disturbance. You are allowing external irrationality to dictate your internal state. Each unnecessary argument steals something from you. Time, focus, emotional balance, intellectual sharpness. You may win small rhetorical victories, but you lose composure in the process. And composure is worth more than triumph. Consider the aftermath of such exchanges. After arguing with someone who refuses to think critically, you do not feel enlightened. You feel depleted. Your mind replays the conversation. You imagine better responses. You craft sharper rebuttals hours later. The fool, meanwhile, moves on without reflection. This asymmetry reveals the truth. The more you care about coherence, the more the chaos unsettles you. There is also the public dimension. In social settings, arguing with fools can lower perception. Observers do not always evaluate who is correct. They evaluate who appears calm. If you descend into visible frustration, even justified frustration, you risk appearing equally unstable. The fool drags you into the mud, and from a distance, both figures look dirty. This is why restraint is not weakness. It is strategy. When you choose not to engage, you preserve hierarchy. You communicate, without words, that your energy is selective. Silence unsettles those who expect reaction. Calmness frustrates those who seek spectacle. Brief responses confuse those who rely on escalation. You are no longer playing their game. And without an opponent, the performance collapses. Schopenhauer's brutality lies in this realization. Not every mind deserves access to your thoughts. Not every argument deserves your participation. Not every accusation deserves response. The intelligent person must learn discrimination. Where is dialogue possible? Where is it futile? Where will engagement produce refinement? Where will it produce only noise? This discernment is maturity. It requires humility to admit that some battles are beneath you. It requires confidence to walk away without the final word. It requires strength to tolerate being misunderstood temporarily. But this strength pays dividends. Your mind remains clear. Your energy remains intact. Your dignity remains untouched. Arguing with fools feels heroic in the moment. It feels like defending truth. But often it is simply defending ego against ego. The wiser path is colder, quieter, more selective. And once you understand that exhaustion is the price of unnecessary engagement, you begin to value something far greater than victory. You begin to value peace. Silence is often misunderstood. It is mistaken for weakness, for submission, for lack of courage. But Schopenhauer would likely argue the opposite. Silence, when chosen deliberately, is not the absence of strength. It is the refinement of it. It is the decision to conserve power rather than squander it. After understanding that arguing with fools drains the intelligent mind, the next step is harder. It is not simply walking away once. It is building the discipline to walk away consistently. Selective silence is not passive. It is calculated. The undisciplined person reacts to everything. Every comment demands a reply. Every provocation demands correction. Every misunderstanding demands clarification. But the disciplined mind asks a different question. Is this worth my internal stability? Most exchanges fail that test. Silence does something argument cannot. It exposes intent. When you stop responding emotionally, people reveal themselves. The fool who thrives on reaction becomes louder. He repeats himself. He escalates. He tries humor, then sarcasm, then insult. Why? Because your calm has removed the fuel. And without fuel, the spectacle collapses. This is uncomfortable at first, especially for intelligent individuals who are used to defending their reasoning. You may feel a surge of injustice. You may feel the urge to correct misinformation immediately. You may fear that others will assume you agree if you do not object. But silence is not agreement. Silence is prioritization. You are choosing long-term influence over short-term satisfaction. Schopenhauer understood that most people do not change their beliefs in the moment of confrontation. Beliefs shift slowly, privately, often in solitude. Public argument hardens positions because pride becomes involved. The more someone feels observed, the less likely they are to concede. So your silence does something paradoxical. It removes the stage. Without an audience to perform for, ego softens over time. There is also a psychological inversion at play. The person who speaks less is often perceived as possessing more weight. Words become scarce, and scarcity increases value. When you speak rarely, but precisely, people listen differently. They lean in. They measure your tone. They assume intention. But if you respond to everything, your voice becomes background noise. Selective silence trains others how to treat you. When you react to every jab, you teach them that you are easily moved. When you remain composed, you communicate boundaries without confrontation. You signal that your emotional equilibrium is not available for manipulation. This is not suppression. It is filtration. Suppression buries emotion. Filtration evaluates it. Ask yourself, am I responding because this matters, or because my ego is irritated? Am I defending truth, or defending image? Am I seeking clarity, or seeking dominance? The honest answer is rarely flattering, and that honesty is where growth begins. There is power in letting foolish statements sit unanswered. Most absurd claims collapse under their own weight when not reinforced by opposition. Silence allows others in the room to think independently. When you argue aggressively, observers often focus on the conflict rather than the content. When you stay composed, attention shifts to the idea itself. You become stable ground in an unstable exchange. This discipline extends beyond conversation. It applies to digital spaces, to comment sections, to social media provocations. Not every criticism deserves engagement. Not every insult deserves acknowledgement. The modern world tempts constant response. Notifications create urgency. but urgency is rarely aligned with importance. The intelligent mind must become selective about exposure. Every reaction strengthens neural pathways. The more you react impulsively, the more automatic that reaction becomes. Silence, practiced consistently, rewires impulse. It creates a pause between stimulus and response. And in that pause lies control. Control over tone. Control over timing. Control over energy. Silence also protects dignity. Once words are spoken in frustration, they cannot be retrieved. Sharp sentences echo longer than we intend. Regret lingers, but silence rarely produces regret. You may later choose to speak. You may later choose to clarify, but you do so from steadiness rather than agitation. There is another benefit few consider. Silence grants perspective. When you disengage immediately, you prevent emotional momentum from carrying you further than intended. You give yourself space to evaluate whether the disagreement even matters in the broader arc of your life. Will this argument matter in a week? In a year? In 10 years? Most conflicts shrink dramatically under that lens. Selective silence is not about avoiding all confrontation. There are moments that demand firmness. There are principles worth defending. There are injustices that require voice. But even then, power lies in measured speech, not reactive speech. When you do choose to speak, let it be concise. Let it be clear. Let it be final. No spirals. No emotional overflow. State your position once. If it is ignored or distorted, withdraw. Repetition lowers authority. Schopenhauer's philosophy is often described as pessimistic, but beneath it lies strategic realism. He did not expect wisdom from every encounter. He did not assume rationality was universal. And because of that, he protected his mental equilibrium fiercely. That is the discipline. To remain calm in the presence of noise. To remain steady in the presence of provocation. To remain silent when silence preserves power. Not every battle deserves your intellect. Not every voice deserves your answer. And not every moment deserves your energy. The mature mind understands this. The disciplined mind practices it. And the wise mind eventually becomes untouchable. There is a moment every intelligent person must face. It does not arrive with applause. It does not announce itself with dramatic music. It arrives quietly, often after disappointment, after yet another circular argument, after another realization that clarity cannot be forced into a closed mind. It is the moment you understand that you are not here to win every debate. You are here to preserve your mind. Schopenhauer believed that solitude was not a punishment for intelligence. It was its natural habitat. The more clearly you see the world, the more you realize how much of it runs on impulse, ego, and unconscious drives. And the more you realize that constant engagement is not strength. It is leakage. Fools are loud because noise is their defense. They fear silence because silence reveals emptiness. Intelligent people, on the other hand, learn to weaponize silence. They understand that not every opinion deserves oxygen. Not every accusation deserves correction. Not every misunderstanding deserves explanation. This is the final shift. You stop trying to educate those who are invested in not understanding. You stop trying to rescue people from their own blindness. You stop mistaking access for connection. And you begin to choose distance deliberately. Schopenhauer was brutal in this regard. He warned that the company you keep shapes the quality of your inner world. If you surround yourself with mediocrity, you will either descend into it or spend your life exhausted by it. There is no third option. Intelligent people often suffer because they assume others are operating in good faith. They assume that if they just explain one more time, clarify one more angle, provide one more piece of logic, the other person will finally see. But fools do not seek truth. They seek victory. And once you recognize that, everything changes. You stop arguing for truth in arenas built for ego. You stop competing in games designed for chaos. You withdraw your presence, not in bitterness, but in clarity. This is not arrogance. It is filtration. The world will call you distant, cold, detached. They will interpret your silence as weakness because they cannot comprehend strength that does not shout. Let them. The most dangerous person in the room is not the loudest. It is the one who speaks only when necessary and leaves when the environment no longer serves growth. There is power in being misunderstood when you no longer need validation. Schopenhauer understood something deeply uncomfortable. Intelligence isolates. Not because intelligent people are superior, but because awareness is heavy. You cannot unsee contradictions once you see them. You cannot unknow manipulation once you detect it. You cannot rejoin shallow conversations once you taste depth. So what do? You cure it. You limit exposure to low-level thinking. You invest in solitude. You refine your standards. You accept that your circle may shrink as your clarity expands. And you become selective with your energy. Energy is the true currency of the intelligent. Attention is sacred. Time is finite. Fools waste all three freely. They argue endlessly. They gossip compulsively. They dominate conversations to feel important. They create chaos to avoid confronting their own insignificance. And if you are not careful, they will pull you into that gravitational field. Schopenhauer's final lesson is simple but ruthless. Do not wrestle in mud and complain about being dirty. You are not obligated to fix the world. You are responsible for protecting your mind. Sometimes that means walking away mid-conversation. Sometimes that means declining invitations. Sometimes that means being alone on a Friday night because peace is preferable to noise. Solitude is not emptiness. It is space. Space to think clearly. Space to create. Space to strengthen your internal world without constant interference. And here is the paradox. When you stop chasing validation from fools, you attract respect from thinkers. Because thinkers recognize restraint. They recognize precision. They recognize someone who does not need to prove intelligence through constant display. The loud impress the insecure. The silent intimidate the perceptive. You do not need to demonstrate superiority. You need to demonstrate self-control. That is the quiet power. When you stop reacting emotionally to provocation. When you stop explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding. When you stop correcting every flawed statement you hear. When you choose peace over proving a point. You begin to operate at a different level. Schopenhauer would say that wisdom is often mistaken for coldness, because wisdom refuses to participate in unnecessary suffering. And arguments with fools are unnecessary suffering. There is one final truth. Not everyone who disagrees with you is a fool. But fools reveal themselves in one consistent way. They refuse reflection. They never pause. They never question themselves. They never concede a valid point. They never grow. And when you detect that pattern, your move is not aggression. It is exit. Quietly, calmly, without announcement. Because walking away from low-level conflict is not surrender. It is strategy. And in that strategy lies your freedom. You are not here to lower your standards to feel included. You are not here to dilute your clarity to avoid isolation. You are not here to shrink your intelligence so others feel comfortable. You are here to sharpen it, protect it, refine it, and deploy it where it matters. Let fools argue with each other. Let noise consume noise. You will be somewhere else, building, thinking, evolving. That is Schopenhauer's brutal advice. And if you can accept it, you will discover something rare. Peace is not found by changing fools. It is found by refusing to join them. And once you master that discipline, you no longer fear stupidity, because it no longer has access to you. If this resonated, don't just agree with it, Apply it. In the next argument you're tempted to win, pause. In the next conversation that drains you, observe. In the next moment someone tries to provoke you, choose restraint. That choice, that small, silent decision, is where your power lives. If you value depth over noise, subscribe to Quiet Power. Not for motivation, for mastery. And remember, the loud seek attention. The intelligent seek clarity. Choose carefully which one you become.